Cheers to
We're
going live.
Aha!
Aha.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're live. Welcome to the American Sci-Fi Classics Track. It is Thursday night. You have made the correct choice. There's nothing else to do on Thursday night. There aren't 850 other things, I'm sure. You made the right choice. Welcome to the American Sci-Fi Classics Track. These are things we started doing in the pandemic, and we can't stop now. There's no stopping it. And ladies and gentlemen, we got a late bloomer here. Sean, welcome.
Can we not talk about Sean's bloomers, please?
Hey. First off, they are full moon bloomers, and that's the entire reason that I am here. Thank you very much.
And they're underoos.
That's right. They are underoos.
I wish. So what we're going to do is a lot of your YouTube shows and podcasts and all that have a topic, and then they talk about non-topic things for like half or 45 minutes, and then they finally get to the topic. We're not doing that. I don't care about anybody's personal lives. We're
not talking about the topic at all, right? We're just cutting the topic completely out of this. It's going to be one whole hour of just...
You clicked here for werewolves, you get nothing. Okay, so here's what we're actually going to do. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go around in a circle. We're going to talk about our favorite werewolves. Let's go around and everybody gets a turn, and here is what's going to happen. You've seen us before. Here's what we're doing. Okay, so introducing first one internet. I'm a little rusty. One internet to my left. Yes, I did it. My co-host, Mr. Gary Mitchell.
Hi, everybody.
And now Sherman is to my left.
Oh, no.
You never should have given me controls, Joe.
You never should
have given Gary controls.
Yes.
I
am the other co-director of the American Sci-Fi Classics Track. Joe and I have matching shirts, and Joe forgot his.
Oh, God.
Gary, don't you hate it when your boyfriend forgets to wear the same clothes as you?
Well, he's at his house. He can go get it.
I could do that.
No, but it's too late for the con. I am also
too late.
Yes,
well,
but I am also the. What's that, Joe?
I was going to say in about 10 months, I swear I won't forget this time.
Well, it's because
Pinning season is over, Joe.
Promises.
But not only am I the co-director of the American Sci-Fi Classics Track, along with that gentleman right over there, I am the producer and co-host of the horror podcast, A Podcast of Amontillado.
Yes.
Mr. Sean Rosado down there has been on.
Yeah.
And we talked about zombies. And
somebody was finally smart enough to actually record my story about zombies. Gary, you're the first.
Yep. So go and check that out. Please like and subscribe.
Please. Or in the case of this current panel, Lycan subscribe.
Indeed.
Our friend, I'm going to give credit to my friend James Palmer and frequent quarantine panel panelist James Palmer, but he's not here, so I'm going to pretend it's my idea.
I'll back you on that.
Thank you. So first up, let's do this. What you do is, as I introduce you, as you do your first pick, introduce yourself as you're doing your first pick. So out of all of you here, only one person called dibs on one thing because she's smart. And so we're going to let Amy start off first. Introduce yourself.
Do I not get to tell mine?
What?
Yeah, do I not get to tell mine?
But first, Amy goes. And Amy, tell us your first pick for your favorite werewolf.
Okay, my first pick, which I called dibs on because I love it so very much, and I did research to prove it, is The Howling from 1981, directed by Joe Dante. Beautiful special effects by one Rob Botton, my love. So, research? Yeah. I had to look at a bunch of other werewolves to make sure I still loved The Howling the best.
Yep, he is also the wonderful gentleman who brought us the special effects in John Carpenter's The Thing.
That's right.
And it nearly
Because
killed him.
Yes.
And RoboCop.
I am contractually obligated to mention the thing as often as possible. So.
Yes.
And so, Amy,
So
tell us who you are and what you do.
I am a person, and I exist in an area. I don't have a podcast or anything like that, so I'm not famous.
I mean, these are all true statements, though. So, I mean, she's dead on the money. I mean, like,
I am alive on the money. Thank you, undead. And no, I don't have a podcast. I'm not famous for any reason whatsoever, but perhaps that will change as I grow to enjoy geeking out in public on a microphone about things. I do have a radio show. I play music every Tuesday night from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard on WUVT-FM, and that can be found online.
You can listen online.
You can listen online at wuvt.vt.edu. I'll drop it in the chat.
I hear the radio voice.edu. Ooh.
The radio man is speaking.
Uh-huh.
The radio man says rock and roll lives.
But
yes, the show is called Eaten by the Monster of Love, of course, taken from the wonderful song by the band Sparks.
Nice.
So tell us about The Howling and why it's your favorite.
Ooh. Okay, so The Howling is my favorite because it's for a lot of reasons, and one of those reasons is it's just really weird. It's not a long movie, but oh my God, don't try to follow the plot. There is so much going on. The continuity is messy, it is convoluted, and yet it has these elements in it that really grab my imagination. And one of those starts out at the very beginning, where you have this Los Angeles seedy underbelly, which you see in a lot of movies from that time, often those set in New York City, but also in LA. And it is almost
kind of underbelly, but a seedy one.
Well, that's up to the underbelly, and it's none of my business.
Very true.
My underbelly, my choice.
I'm going to put my.
I didn't realize it was going to be that kind of podcast.
Right, I'm saying, right?
It's not that kind of party.
Wait, you've seen the other Howling movies. It kind of is. Remember those marsupials.
Don't start me about the other Howling movies. That's not my topic.
That's fair. That's fair.
I am absolutely talking about the one that was created in 1980, released in 1981. It had already won an award before it was released because of the special effects of Rob Bottin. And what I want to kind of get into before I start talking about the effects is what's special to me about the movie. And that is a sort of bizarre kind of Americana that goes through it. And it mingles this urban horror with folk horror, with this notion of post-counterculture California, which is, it's very interesting because you have the elements of anxiety about, first of all, the sex industry that's on the street and the danger associated with it. Also the fear of serial killers, which is very much coming into the public at the time, at the 70s and the 80s. And the also the aftermath of a lot of, well, and still not even aftermath of cult activity, especially in California in the 60s and 70s. So these things come in there with the werewolf mythos, and they do make it work. And it's ridiculous and also pretty scary at the same time because they are bringing in all of these other real life elements. There's not a single metaphor. Werewolf, lycanthropy, it's not a metaphor for sexuality. That's just incidental to the whole mess. Lycanthropy is about being a werewolf and killing and ripping everybody apart and spreading it to the world. But another thing that I truly have to say that I adore about The Howling is the effects, because, okay, a lot of you probably know this already, but the person who was originally supposed to do the effects was Rick Baker, who's a god. But he was going over to do John Landis's movie, An American Werewolf in London. And that has a legendary werewolf transformation scene. That's the thing about werewolf movies, the transformation scene. That's what people are sort of in there for. The American Werewolf in London transformation is beautiful. It's very smooth. It's very detailed. And it's slow. You see it. But the one that Rob Bottin does in The Howling is different from that because it's gross. It's slow, it's agonizing, and it is liquid and dripping. I mean, it's pornographic. And there is, in fact, werewolf sex in the movie, very lurid, full moon campfire werewolf sexy times. But the actual werewolf transformations are nasty in a way that is tangible, it's palpable. And that's one of the beauties of the movie for me, because it's not romantic and it's also not entirely other and abject. The lycanthropes are not quadruped. They stand up on their hind legs. They continue to be anthropomorphic throughout their transformation. So there's something extra special, gnarly about the werewolves in The Howling. And it brings in also the kind of the family dynamics that you'll see in another horror movie, which I love, which is Near Dark, where you have the vampires in their family unit. And that, of course, was a great kind of prequel, in a sense, for Lost Boys, where you have these vampire families. But you're always going to come down to the difference between the movie monsters, vampires versus werewolves. Werewolves are not glamorous. There is nothing glamorous about a werewolf. Vampires are always going to have a little tinge of that quasi-human part. Werewolves are about completely getting rid of that and turning into something scary. Let's see. I want to leave time for everybody to do their intros, and I'm not sure exactly what the format is going to be if you want to do continued monologue.
That's fine. If you you can, we're going to come back around to everybody, so you'll get multiple shots at multiple werewolves. So
That sounds
don't feel bad, Amy, because seriously, you're going for the Sean Rosato Award of talking like a lot without anybody else. So I feel very comfortable around you right now. You're taking some of the pressure off of me. So thank you.
Oh, okay. I just didn't want to be a screen hog since it's already 15 after 9.
No, that's usually me. So you're take it, please, for the love of God.
The other notable thing about Howling for me is that is one of John Carradine's last roles.
Yes.
And he is fantastic in it.
He's so fantastic, and he plays this iconic character named Earl. And Earl is this old man, and he is one of the first people who is encountered. Okay, I'm going to go into The Howling a little bit. So in the beginning, there is a TV newscaster, Karen White, and she is being contacted by a serial killer who has been brutalizing women in LA. And as she connects with this serial killer, he challenges her to come down to the seedy film district and meet him in one of the peep show porn theaters. So she goes, and of course she's absolutely dressed like a damsel. She's wearing this, orchid flowing dress and walking through an alley, being solicited, obviously. And then she gets into the theater. All the men who are in the porn shop trying to, get their porn flee at the sight of a woman outside of the sex industry. And so she goes into the booth, and the booth, as you'll see as a motif, has a smiley face sticker on the door. The smiley face sticker is a signature of the serial killer, whose name is Eddie Quist. She goes in, and the door shuts behind her, and she hears this frightening voice in her ear, and it is Eddie, the serial killer, and he turns on the film, and it's a roughie. It is a violent sex film, which isn't just bondage, it's pretty much somebody is being filmed getting assaulted, and she's made to watch this film. So there's the sexual threat, but also the threat of getting murdered. The police catch up with her because she's gone offline, because she was supposed to be live and connected to the TV station while interviewing the serial killer. Naturally, that doesn't work out. The cops come in, they shoot Eddie. She passes out, and when she comes back, she's got PTSD, she's got amnesia, she doesn't know what happened to her. So her psychiatrist, who is interestingly named, let's see, I can't remember now that I look, so I'm going to have to consult my notes. Her therapist, Dr. Wagner, whose name is actually taken from a previous werewolf movie, tells her, oh, you should come down to the colony. Now, when you're thinking about a movie where there's a place in California and it's called the colony, you're going to be thinking of cults.
Oh, yeah.
So that is what they're immediately poking you with, is that you're going to go to this place and there's going to be some weirdos. And when she and her husband go together out to this place in a little cove, the ocean is there, the forest is there, and there are all these rustic cabins, and there's a party going on. And the party is strange for a couple of reasons. There are a lot of people there who just look like normal folks. And then there's the band. The band is this very country, 19th century looking, almost mountain music, old-timey music band. And they're just there. They're not in costumes. They're actually dressed in clothes from the 19th century. And they're playing their fiddles and singing their country songs. And then there's Earl, played by John Carradine, who is this old cattle rustler type. And you see him kind of moseying around, wandering around the great big bonfire. And he's muttering to himself about how it's no good anymore. My teeth are dull. I've got to end it all. And he's trying to throw himself into the fire in the middle of this party under the full moon. And so he's got to be deterred from doing so. And they have to tell Karen and her husband that, oh no, it's okay. Earl's a good guy. He's just a little old and you know how things happen. So they completely get rid of that. Meanwhile, Karen's husband, Bill, is being macked on mercilessly by a sultry witchy poo lady named Marcia. And she's got a necklace with teeth on it, and she's wearing leather, and she doesn't look like anybody else at this gig, aside from perhaps this dude who turns out to be her brother, who's hunkered down by the fire, and he's wearing a combination denim jacket, fur collar, and he's got the expression on his face that one associates with the slack-jawed yokel who's not quite right. There's no better way to put it. I don't know how to put that.
A touch of inbreeding, perhaps.
A touch, just a touch. So they're hinting at some other kinds of Americana type legends in this party, which introduces Karen and Bill to the colony. As I said, don't try to follow the plot. Lately, I've been watching a lot of Italian Gothic giallo, and there's always something of a supernatural element, and it's also sexy and murdery. The fashion is not nearly as good in this, but quite similarly, don't try to follow the plot. There is a lot going on, and it may or may not sort out. Another genre that The Howling does some work with is exploitation cinema. Not only are there allusions to it in the porn theater, but just in terms of how things are filmed in order to shock. So it's kissing these sort of trashy genres on the mouth. And at the same time, it's a major Hollywood release.
There is a lot more going on with this movie than I thought there was.
There's a ton going on. And meanwhile, you've got Joe Dante. And Joe Dante loves humor. And Roger Corman kind of gave him one of his earlier breaks with this movie, which Roger Corman was wont to do. He liked to give younger directors breaks because you don't have to pay them a lot.
Right. Well, Crowe was
and
also infamous for the
affordable they
fact
were.
that if you showed up and said, I can do a movie in 4 days on budget, and you did it, you would work for Corman forever. So
Yeah.
that was always one of those things that really happened. But the thing that we need to come back to around this is you talk about this movie is embracing schlocky or other types of genres that are not normally embraced. That's the whole horror industry, though, right? Like sci-fi and porn or anything that is not the normal traditional storytelling of what was mainstream at that time. All kind of got pushed into like this bin. I mean, if you're a kid who grew up in the 80s, you knew that basically all the good movies were at the front, and then all the horror and sci-fi were at the back, and then there was that beaded curtain that the kids couldn't go through because on the other side was where all the porn and the smut was. That's
Right.
I mean, so it really is. These are all kissing cousins. So embracing that only helps, because it all is art. It's all. Everything should make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. It should make you think, and The Howling does that. It is art in that form. So the fact that it then looks at peep shows, or it just looks at, like you said, the seedy underbelly, is just exactly, Kevin. It's art. So it really does lend credence to horror movies can be art. And if you've been paying attention to 2022. This is the year of horror movies, and we haven't had one of these years in a long time.
I was just about to say, like, what you're talking about, bringing this sort of originally lowbrow genre up into the higher brow cinema echelon. Like, Jordan Peele is doing remarkable stuff with horror.
Oh my gosh!
Because he is a true horror auteur. Like,
right.
he has an encyclopedic knowledge of horror and the history of horror, and so he's able to do the references back to the heyday of horror, while bringing it up into this sort of intellectual, more sophisticated thing without losing the sort of fun, not necessarily schlockiness, but schlockiness. Like, he doesn't lose that. He elevates it.
Let's go around to let's get Lola's first pick out of the way, and
Yes.
and then we'll keep going. So Lola, your first pick on your werewolfiness list.
My
Where
favorite.
would people know you?
Oh, my name's Lola Laracy. My website broke about a year ago, and I still haven't fixed it. But if you Google me, you'll find me. It's either me or some other dead old ladies who I'm related to. So look for the one who's still alive, and that's me. One day I will be one of the old dead ladies. But anyways, so I'm a writer, and I'm an avid TV and movie watcher, and I love doing these panels, and I love Dragon Con. And my favorite werewolf ever is Monroe from Grimm.
Oh my gosh! Okay.
Yep. Now he may not be the most,
Silas Ware Mitchell, yeah.
Yeah, which is funny. His middle name is Weir. Weir.
Okay.
Maybe he
Wink,
was
wink,
born
nod,
to play the
nod,
part.
hi.
I know.
Yeah.
Maybe that wasn't CGI or anything. Maybe that was really him. But anyways, I love. Bluebot. Yep. And I just loved his whole trajectory. I mean, I loved him meeting Rosalie and their relationship. And he was the hapless werewolf. He doesn't want to hurt anybody. He's just a guy tinkering with his watches, just trying to live his life, getting into trouble with his best friend, Nick, who's a bad influence, trying to get him out
Exactly,
there.
vegan.
Yeah, he's vegan. Yeah, so he doesn't want to go out and shred people like they're shredded pork. He doesn't want to. Sometimes he accidentally does, but we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
Who hasn't slaughtered an innocent in a unavoidable murder spree?
I
Well, as long
mean,
as you're not a Bauerschwein, you're okay.
I don't remember that. Which one was that?
Those were the pig people.
Yep.
The little pigs,
yeah, they
it
were.
was 3 little pigs versus the big bad wolf in
That's
Grimm.
right. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I loved about Grimm, because it took all those old fairy tales and it made it applicable to like actual people who you might meet. And you're like, that makes sense that they're the pig people and they're the werewolves. And that lady is really mean because she really has that face, and she's a really mean person, so that makes sense.
So let's do this. That's good stuff. Let's go on to Sherman. He's the one that says ethereal laughter. That's Sherman.
No, it's
Tell
not.
people who you are.
Ethereal laughter. No, yeah. My name's Sherman. I am a lifelong fan of science, fictional and otherwise. Mine would be the one that shifts the most according to who draws it, and it's from Star Wars, and it would be the Bothans.
The Bothans.
Because according to who draws them, they are either feline, canine, or equine.
Right. But okay, I gotta call BS on this, Sherm. Okay, and I gotta do it for one reason.
Okay.
They don't change from human to wolves. They are not shapeshifters. If they shapeshifted, I would give this one to you.
Right.
Well, that's the thing, though. They are humanoid. So in the science fiction definition and therianthropy, they would actually be.
Yeah. Sean, since they're spies and they're constantly changing their nature, would that count?
I don't think so, because Mario Van Peebles did a werewolf movie based in science called Full Moon, and they had science werewolves, and those people changed forms. So I think we can't give it to them. Like I think on definition they need to be shape changers. Now they could be conscious of changing shape, but I think we can't give it to Sherman. I think I have to pull a veto card. Is this like soccer? Like
that's going to completely eliminate Shista Vannons as well.
True.
You know where you can fight this out, though? Saturday nights in Gadsden, Alabama.
Saturday nights in Gadsden, Alabama. You too. Let's do this. All right.
I want to see it.
SpartanProWrestling.com. Come check that out. I'm the ring announcer. Let's go to somebody
Sherman
else.
would crush me, man. He just beat the crap out of me.
I don't know. Sean, I think you're crafty.
I'm spry, but I'm not crafty. I don't know.
Let's do this. Let's go right to the top, metaphorically. Gary Mitchell.
Oh, okay.
That's not me.
We'll get to everybody. Gary, who are you? You already said who you were.
That's right.
First one on your werewolf list.
My first pick, most people will probably be surprised by. They probably would have expected me to go with a different movie, because I have talked about this movie with Sean on this YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But I am actually going to go with Werewolf of London.
Oh, it's our backdrop right now.
An American Werewolf in London.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Werewolf
in London.
There's another one that's not the same?
There's a previous one, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yep, 1935.
That's the pun of American Werewolf in London. Yeah.
Yeah. Gary, tell us about this thing.
The way it's one of the first. It's early. It's like I said, it's 1935. It's very spooky and atmospheric. They were after the Universal Wolfman because everybody followed Universal when it came to horror. But it showed how the Universal Wolfman kind of set the tone for everybody for years until we get to The Howling and American Werewolf in London, where they were all basically, guys with very fuzzy faces. But again, it's got a really good story. It's got really cool special effects. And it's a lot of fun. And there are a lot of movies from 1935 and very few of them hold up. This one does.
I also did not expect you to pick that one, Gary. But let's see, who has not gone?
My other runner-up was The Curse of the Werewolf. But if I get a second pick, I'll talk about that one.
Oh, you'll get a second pick. You're the co-director. You get a second pick. Let's go to Sarah and then Sean. I guess we're kind of doing alphabetical by first name. I don't know. Sarah, go.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I am also a person from a place, and I do stuff, and I like watching sci-fi and horror and all that. And my first pick is not necessarily my favorite, but it's my first. And of course, I'm referring to the Michael Jackson Thriller video.
Oh, I love that.
I was 7 years old, and my parents let me stay up to watch the premiere of the video on Friday Night Videos.
Oh my gosh!
Yep.
I was just
I
going to
remember
say.
that.
Okay.
And it was the world
Scared the
premiere.
shit out of me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was the world premiere. I was 7 years old. It scared the ever living crap out of me. It's also my first zombies, but
Oh wow! Yeah.
and that has spawned a lifelong love of zombies. But it was my first real foray into horror, actually, and it was my first werewolf, and it scared the crap out of me, but in a way that I was just like, but I like being scared that way.
Mm.
Because it's a safe way of being scared, because I know that there's nothing that can actually happen to me because it's a fantasy. And that really is sort of what I credit to starting my love of horror. And because after that, I would like go down to the basement and watch horror movies by myself in the dark, you know? And but yeah, it was just this great sort of introduction, and this being allowed to feel that the heart racing and the you know, hair on the back of your neck sticking up and everything, because it was okay, because you weren't actually going to get hurt by anything. And so yeah, I absolutely credit that to my lifelong love of all things horror.
It's only 14 minutes or 15 minutes.
It's 13 actually.
13.
Yeah.
Oh, that's even more supernaturally. I love that. But the thing is, there were so many references that we didn't get when we first watched Thriller. But like you said, we went back and found out what he was talking about.
Right.
And like who Vincent Price was, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like that was my first introduction to Vincent Price.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And also, again, another joint by John Landis.
Yep.
And I love the fact he is more cat-like than wolf-like.
Yes.
Yeah, especially at the end with the contact lenses when he turns back to the camera at the very, very end, and it's the cat eyes.
Yes. He's coming to terrorize y'all's neighborhood.
This gave me chills. Love that.
Okay, so now let's go to Sean.
Okay, so I have to ask first, are we qualifying this? Does it have to be a classic like the normal classics rule, or can I pick something from the 21st century?
10 years or older.
My
Well,
second
it's usually
pick was
20
from,
years
like,
or
a month
older.
ago, so.
Well, no, the reason why I'm asking is that
we'll have
there's
the
actually-
Sean exception.
Well, no. I mean, because if I'm picking from the 20th century, basically, I would pick, because I got to. It's the first werewolf that always comes to mind. And amazingly enough, nobody's talked about it yet, which is Larry Talbot, aka the Wolfman in Monster Squad, aka Wolfman's Got Nards.
Got nards.
I love that movie. I own that movie on DVD. I love that movie.
I
Right.
love this werewolf so much, and the reason why is because I had seen like old school werewolf movies before, you know, like the original Universals and whatnot, Werewolf in London. I don't believe when I had seen Monster Squad, I had seen American Werewolf yet. But I remember the argument of what are the two ways that can kill the werewolf, and they go through the whole list: power tools, explosions, blah blah blah. Only silver bullets. And the irony, of course, is in the movie they use every single way they could think of to try to kill Talbot, and they can't do it. But the thing that always struck me as a kid is Talbot sincerely does not want to be the thing that goes out and kills people. And I think that's something that, you know, like when we're talking about The Howling, in The Howling, it's a choice. Like these people are kind of like, it's that cult mentality. Like they're brought into it and they're made to want to, you know, grasp into their animalistic side. You know, and that has kind of become more of a modern take. But because Monster Squad was right on the edge of let's do classic monsters, but we're not necessarily modernizing them completely for an audience, they did that old school idea of this is somebody who probably accidentally became a monster and is doing everything they can to not be the monster. And so when he's finally shot with silver bullets and dies, it's the only time I can remember it happening, but he reaches up to Eugene as he's shaking, bleeding out, and he says, "Thank you." And he's crying and he just dies. And I'm like 8 years old, and I'm like, the Wolfman died. And this guy had been ripping cops to shreds like 30 seconds earlier, man, like just tearing people apart. And I felt bad for the Wolfman. And that's good movie making.
Well, yeah,
Well,
and there's
and
that also in An American Werewolf in London.
Right.
where David is. He's turning into a monster. He didn't ask for this, and he doesn't believe it's happening. And it starts to maybe feel kind of awesome. And then at a certain point, he doesn't have a choice. There's part of him that's gone. So what you're talking about with Monster Squad, it's absolutely very different.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing that always stuck with me. And Larry Talbot is one of those actors, if you've ever seen him, he is all over the place in genre movies. He's one of those actors like, oh, that guy. I mean, he's everywhere. But the thing that I loved about it was you also got the modern look of the classic Universal Wolfman. And that was a cool thing that we had seen, because at this point, we're talking Howling had come out, Michael Jackson's Thriller had come out, of course, American Werewolf had come out. We had some amazing full-bodied lycanthropy, and the guy with just the prosthetic mask and the fursuit and looking more like a guy in a mask had not really been in vogue anymore, and they made him look cool. I mean, he looked like a bodybuilder in this thing. I mean, he was just ripped, and that face was just so gnarly, because it technically wasn't a Universal movie, so they couldn't use the exact likenesses, so they did as much as they could without actually stepping over the copyright, which was a really cool thing to see. It was really cool.
Well, actually, it is the last, and this is official, it is the last of the classic Universal Monsters movies. It is a Universal picture. They were able to do the Universal Dracula, the Universal Frankenstein. They changed him up a little bit. You know, they did, like Sean said, they did the updating, but it is part of that whole Universal Monsters canon.
Now, Gary, are you sure about this? Because on my Blu-ray that I have of Monster Squad, this is just what they said when they were making the movie. The people who were doing the art, they said that was one of the reasons why Frank is gray and not green, because they weren't allowed, because Universal was going to spank him.
Okay, I'd heard it the other way.
I don't.
Yeah,
because that's why. Yeah, so I don't know.
It's the reverse of why the Hulk was green and not gray.
Right. It is. But it is, like you said, Sean, he's a fantastic representation of the Wolfman. And if you're a fan of those classic Universal monsters, you owe it to yourself to see this film.
Yeah, I mean, especially if, and let's be fair, if you're younger and you don't want to watch old black and white movies, I get that. Sometimes people are just turned off by black and white movies, or movies that have slower pacing, or maybe you don't like the sound, or maybe the music selection just isn't ringing true to you. I know there are movies that I can't watch because I'm like, it just doesn't feel modern enough for me. I get that. Monster Squad will hit all the bells for the classic Universal monsters. It does a phenomenal job paying homage and really giving everybody a place to shine in that classic over. So
yeah, and it's also safe horror. It's horror with training wheels. You know, if you kind of like being spooked but you don't like being scared, this is a good one for that.
I mean, okay, is it though, really? I mean, it is in the fact that it's not gory, but like 87 police officers die. Sean's dad's best friend is blown up by Dracula. 3 teenage girls are eaten and turned into brides.
Yeah, but like, there's nothing graphic. Yeah, a lot of people die, but it's not graphic. And it's not good. And I
remember where Drac puts his head, like I always remember this as a kid. He pulls a guy's head like under his arm and he just flexes. And the guy's head technically is just his hat, but the way they shot it, it looks like his head pops off. And I remember 8 years old going like, Dracula just decapitated a guy with his bicep. And I'm looking at my parents like, Dracula decapitated a guy with his bicep. Just freaking out.
Yeah, but I compare it to something like, I compare it to something though like The Howling or The Thing or a straight up horror, you know, even
much more
Halloween.
Explicit,
and much more terror inducing. Monster Squad has more of a sense of fun.
And there, it doesn't have the buckets of the corn syrup with the red food coloring in it.
Right. So let's go. I did want to. I've got just a quick pick. I did want to point out my first pick that I'm surprised no one has gotten to yet. This was a werewolf story that goes really deeper into a lot of stuff that's going on in the werewolf's personal life. Like we learn a lot about the physical appearance and like what he likes to drink and where he likes to do that. And of course, I'm talking about Warren Zevon's Werewolves of London.
I literally had that Wikipedia up. I was going to say that. Oh my goodness.
Joe, I did say if you broaden the category to therianthropy, you could have included Manimal too.
Oh, I've got a whole 15 minutes on that, but we'll skip over that. But here's the thing.
Manimal is disallowed because he never turns into a wolf.
Oh, but you know what? It does change, which makes
But he
him
had
more
the potential to.
qualified than the Bothans. Because if Michael Jackson can get in as a werecat, then Manimal gets in before Bothans get in.
So here's the thing: Warren Zevon's werewolf. We know the status of his hair. Perfect.
It's perfect.
Of course.
We know that he enjoys drinking pina coladas. We know where he likes to drink them.
Yes.
At Trader Vic's.
Yep.
Trader Vic's. And I swear one day I've been to Dragon Con like a million times. I have yet to drink a pina colada at Trader Vic's. And I feel terrible.
Have you drank one in the rain?
No, I haven't done that.
I heard it's great.
Oh, so many things. So let's go to now. Hang on. This is Billy. Billy, thank you.
Me too.
Also, yeah, me too. But let's go back around to Amy. Do you have a second pick on your list?
Let's see. Actually, I really kind of don't, even though I have watched a bunch of werewolf movies, there's nothing that actually just makes me want to froth at the mouth and be a real nerd as much as The Howling.
Agreed.
And I could talk so much more about it, and that's so terrible. Please.
Well, have you ever eaten Fruit Brute, the breakfast cereal?
No, I did not ever eat Fruit Brute. I've never eaten a Monster cereal.
What? Sarah, this is your sibling.
Hey.
Hold on.
We
I'll be right back.
Sorry, you have been ejected.
We weren't allowed to have sugar cereals.
What?
Oh, Sarah. And
Oh,
Amy,
well, in
I'm
that case,
sorry.
it's not her fault.
No.
I apologize.
And you'll never really have them because the ones they have now aren't the same.
No.
How dare you,
I
Lola?
mean, the Fruit Brute's okay now, but at least they brought Fruit Brute back this year. So
Thank you.
When,
Yes.
when I was a kid and they had the Monster cereal commercials on TV, Fruit Brute wasn't in it. They had
You're right.
Frankenberry,
yeah,
Count
he was in the late
Chocula, and
70s, early 80s.
Blueberry.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
a
Late 60s,
late
actually.
bloomer.
Yeah.
You have to be old to remember the Fruit Brute.
Gary,
That's
pull me up
awesome
on
to
full
remember
screen
the
for a
Fruit
And
second.
Yummy Mummy.
Gary, do me a favor. Pull me up on full screen for a second. Okay, do me a favor.
All right, there you go,
Everybody
one
needs
second.
to go find these
There you go.
Monster Mash
Oh,
fruit
sweet.
gummies.
Nice.
Oh my god.
These are fruit gummies, and they have a Fruit Brute. So Count Chocula is great, which whatever, but they don't taste like the marshmallows. They're actually all fruit flavored. There's lemon, lime, orange.
An afro.
Yeah, he does actually. Fruit Brute has an afro. So
Pretty cool.
Brilliant.
funny.
70s, man.
That is so funny.
He's got
So,
the
yeah.
young Michael Jackson afro.
He
He
does.
does. He's a young
Maybe
Michael
that's
Jackson.
it.
Have you
All right,
seen
sorry, go back to Amy now.
have you seen the meme about Monster Mash that if you read the lyrics it's totally about an orgy?
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
They did the mash.
They did the mash. They did the Monster
Good.
Mash. It's an orgy. It is just straight up.
Bobby Boris Pickett was a freako, I'm sure. But those parties, I bet were amazing. So let's go back to Sherman. Pick number 2 on your list.
yeah, Sherman.
Mine would be Wolverine.
An actual
as a
werewolf?
So what?
Wolverine as a werewolf.
Okay, Sherman, goodbye.
No.
You have to pick
No,
actual-
hear me out. Hear me out.
All
It
right.
was in Van Helsing.
Oh, you're talking
Helsing.
about
Oh, see, you almost got booted. But the movie Van Helsing, where Hugh Jackman, who is Wolverine in real life, we assume,
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
he played a guy that turned into a werewolf. You are correct. Okay,
Yes.
continue.
Are you okay over there?
Okay, was that it? All right.
Yeah.
That's
that
it.
was it, yeah.
Let's go back to Lola. Do you have your second pick?
Well, I mentioned it a little bit ago erroneously, but one of my favorite movies when I was a kid was American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, we touched on it. So go take us there, Lola.
Well, I started rewatching it today because it's been a long time since I've seen it. But I just love the two guys, Griffin Dunn and the other dude, and I just love them. I love that they're backpacking in Northern Ireland in the bog or whatever, and it's like
It's a great
The Moors.
the moors.
Stay off the moors.
I know. Well, that's all there is. It's just moors.
I know, right? Stay off the moors. Where am I supposed to go, you son of a bitch?
There's nothing else.
Heathcliff.
Less
There's-
time in the
What do you
moors.
want?
Less
John,
time
John,
in the
are you
moors.
saying that there's no more?
Gary,
Boot yourself.
Gary, Gary's
They
out.
have
All
to
right.
go
Gary's out, all
tomorrow.
Gary's gone to the sunken place.
Yeah, goodbye.
Going to the
Oh
trap
wow!
room.
Oh
Lola,
dear Lord!
continue. American Werewolf in London.
And why didn't they have a car? Why didn't they? That was silly. And why? And the
They were
people that-
hiking.
They were
well, that was
backpacking.
Hiking, right?
It was supposed to be an experience. There are a couple of guys from New York, and they're out there in the heath with their big old backpacks, and they're being American tourists. And that's
American
exactly
doo-doos.
what they're doing. And they have no plans. They think they're going to stay in some cute little rustic
B&B.
hostel out in the Cotswolds. And in fact, they end up in a town where everybody slams the doors and windows shut
As
against
soon as
the
the sun
against
goes
the
down.
It's like the dudes in Deliverance who are just going on a little canoe trip.
That's very true.
That's very true. It's like, oh, what can
They're
happen?
very
to me? I guess
hostile.
it's a 20-year-old or whatever. What's going to happen to me? I'll be fine.
Well, not to mention, I mean, they are New Yorkers, right? They think they've seen everything. I mean,
That's
look,
true.
I'm a
Yeah.
Puerto Rican, and a lot of my family lives in New York because
Uh-huh.
we live on the island or we live in New York. And first off, none of them, like almost none of them, have driver's license, which is hilarious.
I know.
So
Okay.
they wouldn't have a
Yeah.
car anyways. Second, they're also under 25 in this movie, and you can't rent a car
can't
even
rent
in
a car.
Europe
That's
if you're
true.
under 25. And
That's
third,
true.
you think you've seen everything when you live in New York. So who
Yeah.
thinks so? Like they're like, we have rats bigger than werewolves here, like that would be their response if
And-
somebody said werewolves existed.
And in New York,
Was that a
in New York
comment
City,
on?
Huh?
I was going to say, was that a comment on An Ugly American with him turning
Yeah.
No,
Well,
not at all.
Continue.
yeah.
Not at all.
But-
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Lola,
Well,
let's go
let me
back.
finish.
Oh, okay, go ahead. What are we talking about?
I don't know. Well, you have a good point, Sean. You have a good point, Sean, because in New York City, there isn't anywhere barren. You're always going to be somewhere. And
Right.
so they
That's
probably think that England is wall to wall London, and that there every stop there's going to be a place to sit and have coffee, which
Right.
they were poo pooed for that. So well, they found out the hard way. They found
They
out
did.
a lot that night. So I just love it. I love the effects. Back when I was 10 when it came out, I thought it was the best thing in the world. I still think it's the best
Yeah.
thing in the world, but
Yeah. I mean, honestly, as far as werewolf movies go, it is one of the best werewolf. I mean, I am a fiend. Like when I talk about monsters, my favorite monster is the werewolf.
Yeah.
And I think that's because for me, it's always been the fact that vampires get too much love. There's too much romanticism around them, and I'm just like, okay, that's fine, whatever. But Frankenstein, I've seen so many adaptations of Frankenstein, but the Wolfman, it's like any kind of werewolf, it's hard to get right. And in my brain, I always wanted to see a werewolf that, in my mind, was literally half man, half wolf. And you don't quite get it in American Werewolf in London. You get a big ass wolf, and it's gnarly looking. And the transformation is amazing, and it looks painful as hell. But if you want to get that half hybrid look, really, The Howling gives you probably one of the first truly iconic, I look like I am half man, half wolf, which was a pretty gnarly thing. But the one great thing that I love about American Werewolf that no other mythology has really ever taken on is that David is tortured by the souls of the people that he kills.
That
Yeah.
part is amazing.
That's
I
what-
agree.
And especially if you think about the sort of ubiquitousness of memory loss
Mm-hmm.
in the whole werewolf transformation. In most of the werewolf stories that I can think of, they don't have any memory of what they've done in their wolf form until they find out the next day.
Right.
You know, until they find out from a third party the next day. Or, you know, like in Wolf with Jack Nicholson, when he finds fingers in his pocket, you know,
Yes.
like,
Well,
what did I do? How did these fingers get here? Like, yeah, there's this whole idea of like, you don't remember that trauma until something either reminds you of it or you figure something out yourself or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that. I honestly can't think of anything where they retain the memory.
Yeah, and he's being haunted by these victims telling him that he has to kill himself.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way
that's
they'll
pretty
know
scary,
peace.
actually, in
You know,
itself.
It
That
is. It
happened
really,
with,
really is.
That happened with Krampus in Grimm, actually, too.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
I didn't remember.
But one of the things I thought was great was that Jack, being, you know, David's best friend, is legitimately trying to help him. He's like, look, I'm dead. You're the last of this particular wolf's bloodline. It sucks. I'm sorry. You got to die. And he's being so sincere. And David, the entire movie, is like, no, I'm not going to kill myself, dude. He's like, I just can't, you know? And they never come out right and say it. But in my brain, the part of my headcanon is that David is Catholic. So for him, suicide is a mortal sin.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm not going to kill myself. Like,
Okay.
I'm not going to do it. But he's being haunted by ghosts, you know? And he's like, I'm just crazy. I have to be crazy. There's no way that I'm not crazy. And I dig that. And I think probably the one misstep that movie has is it jumps too much time, because he basically is attacked and then he wakes up like 28 days later, or like 25 days later. It's like 3 days before the next full moon. He's basically slept the entire month. So there's no time for him to normalize. There's no time for him to really have a strong relationship. We infer it because we just assume that he's had a month to kind of adjust, but it's really only been like 3 or 4 days. And I think it would have been a much more interesting story of him deciding to stay in London, you know, shacking up with the nurse a little bit longer, having like a deepened relationship. And then all of a sudden he starts to see his buddy out the corner of his eye. That would have been an interesting take. But again, this is like, this is really like nitpicking an almost perfect movie. So I feel that it's a little unfair to beat down on American Werewolf for that. But that was one of the ones that I always kind of like didn't enjoy. And also, and I didn't get this until I was much older, is the ending, which is, okay, he just gets shot and he's dead. And then they cut to the girlfriend and she's sad. And they cut back and David's just human. And then it just immediately cuts to credits. And I'm like, what the, like, why is it such a hard cut to credits? And that's
It's
part
beautifully filmed, though.
It
That
is.
alley scene, it's absolutely gorgeous. And actually, it's been, it was, I'm pretty sure there was a callback to that in season 1, episode 5 of NBC's Hannibal, which I also will shut up about ever. And because in the alley, you've got the same kind of lighting, the garbage in boxes along the side, and then you have the image of a crucified human man. And what you have with David at the end of American Werewolf in London is that same beautiful tunnel shot with the lights and the, you know, being chased. And after he dies, he's there almost like this Jesus form. He's like a Pietà as as in his dead human form, and they make him look very beautiful.
Yeah, all you needed was Ginny Gutter to kind of, you know, run up and kind of hold him in her arms.
I love you.
Right, and that really would have been like a Pieta kind of moment. I mean, it really would have been. Which, by the way, if nobody knows what she's referring to, the Pieta is like one of like the great romanticism. Like, it's actually this really. If you've ever seen the statue in real life, it has a very weird proportion because it's meant to be on a pedestal. And when it's on a pedestal, it has the right proportions. But if you see it in person, gigantic legs of the Virgin Mary holding like Mary's like swole, right? And then she's got like these giant arms that are holding Jesus. And when you're looking up on a pedestal, it's in proportion. But a lot of times they'll put it like face level and all the proportions are off. But it's a beautiful, beautiful statue.
And you can tell it's Michelangelo because she's ripped.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, she's just like, whoa. So, yeah.
Let's go to Sarah for your second round.
Okay, so my second pick is actually something that I just discovered like a month ago, which is Wolf Like Me on Peacock with Isla Fisher and Josh Gad. It's like a dark comedy, romantic kind of thing about a dude who falls in love with a woman who turns out to be a werewolf, and they use the whole thing sort of uses this werewolf in history and existence as a sort of allegory for trauma. And like everybody in this movie is going through their various traumas, but like in accepting this woman's affliction, this guy and his daughter like heal themselves and each other and her, and they form this pack, the three of them, and it's really, really beautiful. And Contact by Carl Sagan features very prominently in it, and that's a favorite book of mine, and I adore it. And there's a fabulous line in it, and I actually wrote it down because it's really great. We've all got wolves in us. You just have to make sure you feed the right one. Which I thought was really great. But like the universe really wants these people to be together, and we don't actually see her transformation, but like Amy was talking about in The Howling, we hear it, and it's very wet, and it sounds very painful, and it sounds very traumatic and violent, and it's really like we see her transformation, but like from looking at him seeing her transformation.
Okay.
Is we see his reaction to it instead of it, and it's horrific and really, really painful, and but the whole show, like it's relatively short. It's 6 episodes. They're like half an hour each, so it's bingeable, and it's just this really lovely story of these people finding each other at a time when they thought they'd never find something like that. So it's, they've both gone through their traumas, and the daughter's gone through her trauma, and also Josh Gad and Isla Fisher have phenomenal chemistry. So it's just it's a really, really good show.
I saw that too, and I loved because Josh Gad at first he's like, "Oh, please tell me what's going on. I want to help you." And then when he finally finds out, the way he reacts, it's just like, and he's like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
You're like
it's basically like you just watch his face for like three minutes straight, just while he listens to this
horrified
and watches it through like a sliver in this reinforced door, and it's just like watching his eyes, and it's crazy.
It's like if you saw the word nope, that's the word nope written all over his face.
It's the gif of the octopus just like booking it like nope. But it's a really, really good show, and the acting is fabulous, and the way the writing of the relationships with all of the people is just really real and really palpable and lovely. So,
Gary, do you have one more?
I have one more, and I have an honorable mention.
Sweet.
An honorable mention, if just for humor's sake, go to YouTube and search for Passive Aggressive Werewolf. And it's a guy who's chained up, and he's like, I'm going to try it. He's like, when I turn into the wolf, you can't let me go. And so she's like, okay. And the girlfriend's okay, I will. And then, the moon hits. He becomes the wolf man. He's like, these chains are really tight. Fine, fine, whatever. It's hilarious. It's like 3 minutes. You'll love it.
Okay.
But I also want to touch on what Sean was saying about the fact that werewolf movies don't get enough love. There aren't enough of them, and most of them are not very good. So finding those good ones are like, is those little gems you have to hold on to. And something that I always like about the werewolf as a monster is, again, all the Universal monsters, almost all of them are sympathetic, but the Wolfman, especially because as Sean was talking about with Monster Squad, is these are people who know what's happening to them but can't stop it. And they're doing everything they can to try to prevent it or find a solution or find a way out of it. And that is, I think, some of the best part of a werewolf movie is when they can play on that aspect. Because then there's the other direction to go in, where the person revels in it and enjoys being the monster and uncovers it. And the one I'm going to go with, and I am tempted to go with Dog Soldiers, but like I said, Sean and I talked about Dog Soldiers just a few weeks ago. Go back and find that episode and watch it. I'm going to talk about Ginger Snaps.
Oh, yes!
So good.
Ginger Snaps is amazing, and I don't think they actually ever use the word werewolf in it.
Lycanthrope is what they always say. Yeah.
And watching, and again, a really good horror movie will lean on the metaphors, and this movie heavily leans on the metaphors of sexuality, becoming a woman, lesbianism. I mean, there's all kinds of implications in this movie, but it is incredibly well written, well acted, great special effects, and again, a character that you're rooting for both the hero and I don't know if I want to call her a villain, but the lady who's becoming the werewolf, you're kind of rooting for her too. And it's a real tribute to the writing on that movie that they pulled that off.
Ginger Snaps is rough. It's a rough watch for me. And yeah, one of those things that I really love about it is that the two sisters, they're not particularly likable. It's beautiful. There are just these grouchy teenagers who are obsessed with morbid things, and their ongoing art project is to take photographs of each other in gory makeup as if they were dead. And it's Harold and Maude, but folie à deux at the same time.
Amy, it's us.
Yes, sir, it's us. But yeah, they don't really seem to be opposed to monstrosity, but when it happens to them, they're terrified. And when Ginger does change and decides that she is really reveling in this, and she does need to be rescued from it, because otherwise things are going to go very, very poorly for everyone involved. But the fact that you do bring in that pathos of her sister having to do her in and having to pretty much bamboozle her into that.
No, it really is a phenomenal movie. It's one of those, you talk about a film that starts off as a metaphor for girls entering the womanhood, because one of the plot points is that as Ginger has been bitten by a werewolf, she also finally has her first period very late in her teen years. And that's a whole thing that it's a metaphor for becoming a woman. It's a metaphor for, just in general, accepting your transition from, being a child into an adolescent, or being an adolescent into an adult, and not knowing what your place is. And when you have these two characters who both think that they have everything worked out, when the horror of life jumps and literally bites one of them, it shocks them into realizing this may not be what we want. And one of them is like, I have to save people, and the other one is like, I just want to see it all burn. The thing that sucks about that, though, is it ends that movie so perfectly. They then made a sequel, which is garbage. Never watched Ginger Snaps 2.
That never happens to horror movies. They never get
but I mean, with a movie that's so strong as Ginger Snaps, like, there was potential for the other sister in a sequel to see how she would have handled, and I don't want to spoil what happens, but how she would have handled the fallout from the first movie. And they show it, but it ends with somebody in a box, basically, because of a tricksy 9-year-old. It is a terrible, terrible ending. And the third one is basically Ginger Snaps, the first movie, except it happens during colonial times. So colonialism and werewolves, yay. So it's not a great franchise, but as a standalone movie, Ginger Snaps is definitely one of the towering giants. And Catherine Isabel does not get as much work being a lead role. She's always a scream queen. She's one of the victims because that girl can pierce the veil with her damn scream. And they let her be, quote unquote, the bad guy in this, and she just crushes it. And I love her.
You've seen American Mary, right? Though.
Oh yeah, American Mary is fantastic. But that was like, I think, what, 10 years later? I think when she did that.
Quite a bit later. Yeah. Catherine Isabel and Emily O'Dear, who plays her younger sister. What?
Emily Watson, I think.
No, it's not Emily Watson. I've got it somewhere, but it's not Emily Watson. That's a different Emily. But they were really young when that movie was done. I think it was a Canadian TV production.
Oh, Emily Perkins.
Emily Perkins. Thank you so much. But yeah, I thought one of the wonderful things about Ginger Snaps is how they do kind of flip what could have been a sort of a lurid slut-shamey aspect of Ginger's transformation, where, you know, obviously she starts being interested in boys and she starts having her period and she's becoming a sexual being. But when she has done her first major mutilation on a guy that she was hooking up with in a car, and bitten him, she's inside and she's puking in the toilet. And she says to her sister, I had this feeling in my stomach. I had this ache inside and I thought it was for sex, but I just want to rip things fucking apart.
Yeah.
And so they actually flip it. It's that, no, she actually is having a craving to be something that's really monstrous and not just frightening femme fatale.
Right. The monster is not being sexual. The monster is literally wanting to tear people apart.
She fucking wants to kill people.
Right. And I love that they do that. I love that they play that dichotomy against each other in that movie because
it's like Jennifer's Body.
Oh yeah, totally.
It's the ultimate sort of revenge for how tortured we are as women.
Yeah.
I can't speak to that, unfortunately, but I can empathize greatly. And I absolutely shake my head yes, because but also just because we haven't given a shout out yet because we've been focusing so much on the werewolves, can we give a shout out to Mimi Rogers in Ginger Snaps as being the mom who figures out that one of her daughters is a serial killer at some point, and she was like, screw it, I'm gonna burn the house down and we're just gonna move to a new town and nobody's gonna know who we are. Like that is a ride or die mom.
Oh yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah,
I love that so much.
Let's Sherman. Let's go to you, but let's do like a lightning round for everybody.
Wait, Joe, I haven't gotten mine yet. I've just been commenting. You haven't gotten my second one yet.
Oh, you'll never get a second one. Go ahead. Do Sherman and then Sean.
Okay. Okay.
Sherman.
No one has mentioned this. The Werewolf series from early Fox TV.
Yeah.
Oh yes, with Chuck Connors.
Yeah.
Sherman, this is gonna freak you out. Sherman, this is gonna freak you out. In my hand, there is the actual series that you were talking about. I was just about to mention.
Well, it was short-lived because many things died early on Fox TV.
It was.
Some things did.
It was expensive
in the early 90s.
Yeah, and it was not a cheap show.
One
so we got the
act. 2 seasons.
Yeah, it came out the same year that Star Trek: The Next Generation came out.
So that's right. It had one more season than Manimal, and I'm still not over it. But the cool thing about this show was, really, it was the Incredible Hulk, but with a werewolf. The dude went from town to town, except he was chasing Chuck Connors, who is amazing, as a grizzled old werewolf. And the only thing I really remember about the show is and he must have had crazy werewolf transformations like the Incredible Hulk did, because there's one episode where he's a dishwasher and a mean person, whoever it is, takes his head and sticks it into the boiling hot dishwater, and that makes him turn into a werewolf. So I understand.
That would do it.
Right. Yeah. So for those who have never seen Werewolf, it really is The Fugitive. meets the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
And the shared connective tissue is that they're werewolves. So Chuck Connors bites the main character and then just pisses off. Like, he's like, I'm just going to go out to the world. And his defining feature is that he's missing an eye.
Forgot about that.
Right, he's missing an eye, so he's always got an eye patch on. And Chuck Connors is right at that age where he's really passing into, I think he was starting to, because he died of cancer, I think, a few years after they did this show.
Yeah.
So he was starting to get that real gaunt look, but it added to this crazy gnarly makeup they would put on him, and he loved flipping up his eye patch as he would transform into a werewolf, and you would see the eye like pulsing underneath, because it was always a werewolf eye. That's why he had to wear the patch, because if you saw it, the werewolf eye was always there. And I always remember that the main character, whenever it was a full moon or he was in danger, he would have that pentacle on his hand.
Oh, I forgot about the pentacle. Yes.
The pentacle on the hand would bleed. They'd hold it up. And I remember, because Chuck Connors was starting to get sick, they realized they had to continue the show, and they kill him off. And you're like, that's the end of the show. They killed the master werewolf. Like, that's it. We're done. The bloodline's ended. And come to find out, no, somebody sired him, and there's another werewolf out there, and the guy has to keep going. And I was like, no, because Chuck Connors was so scary as the evil werewolf that you're constantly hunting down, that I could not believe it, because it turned out to be like some rich, affluent, like New Yorker, like
Not as
CEO
cool
or something.
Chuck Connors. No.
Huh?
Not as cool as Chuck Connors.
Nowhere near as cool as Chuck Connors at all. But no, Werewolf was a fantastic. Sherman, all the stuff I said about Boffins, forgiven.
Yeah.
Beautiful selection, sir. Beautiful choice.
All right, and since you're already teed up, Sean, and we're running late, what is your second choice?
You know, I'm struggling here because I want to talk about so many shows. Obviously, we haven't talked about Dog Soldiers really, but one that I think a lot of people probably haven't seen that they should see. It's a fairly independent made movie as far as its production. It was made in 2014. It is called Late Phases. And if you have never seen this movie, it is about a blind Vietnam vet whose kids basically can't afford to keep him with them anymore, but he has retirement benefits enough that they will put him in this community. And it's actually a very nice community, and he moves there and he's like, okay, I can deal with this. And he's actually fairly well adjusted, but he is like an ex-Marine. He's got PTSD. And he's just trying to get along with everybody. And he's blind, so he's basically learning his neighbors. He's learning the yard. And then all of a sudden, one of the neighbors gets killed. And he thinks it's like maybe a rabid wolf or something. And it turns out to be a werewolf. So ex-Vietnam vet at the very late stage of his life, who is blind and cannot fight a normal fight, has to kill a werewolf before this werewolf kills off all of his neighbors. And he's trying to figure out who the werewolf is. He's trying to figure out, how do I kill a werewolf? There are all these things that happen, and it is phenomenal. If you have never seen it, it is a tight run movie. There is no fat on it. Every character they introduce you to is somebody that you're going to enjoy. And when they get killed, you do not like it. And I absolutely adored this movie. So if you're a fan of stuff like Bubba Hotep, it's called Late Phases.
And I'll put a link to that in the show.
It is so good. But a special shout out also, because she just died, is Angela Lansbury in the only werewolf movie that I think she was in.
Oh, The Company of Wolves.
Company of Wolves, which is the wildest French Red Riding Hood tale that you're ever going. They have an obsession with milk in this movie, milk and blood and werewolves, and I still don't know what the milk was about. I watched this movie like 12 times. And I can't explain to you.
It's Angela Carter. She's always diving in with the fairy tales. And so, of course, the milk is always something that comes up in fairy tales, especially as something that a girl has to fetch. It's something wholesome.
Unless it's an allusion to Romulus and Remus.
Yeah.
It could be. But the cool twist on that one, and this is not really giving anything away, is there's two things. One, it actually goes back to the old myth of the werewolf, which is that if you have a unibrow, that's a sign that you're a werewolf.
Right.
Right.
Oh, no.
So the unibrow is a sign of it. And then the love interest, who is the huntsman, turns out to have a unibrow. And so take that with you as you will. But it's a fantastic movie as well. But yeah, Late Phases, and special shout out to Angela Lansbury for Company of Wolves. So there you go.
Nice.
So let's do Sarah. Amy, do you have one more?
Go ahead, Sarah.
I was just gonna say, just because I just recently watched it, Wolf with Jack Nicholson and Michelle Pfeiffer, and
Good movie.
I saw that in the theater right after I graduated from high school because I was obsessed with James Spader.
Who wasn't?
Right? It's really, really fun. And it's actually the least unhinged I have ever seen Jack Nicholson in a part, which is ironic because he's playing a werewolf. Like in The Shining, the descent into madness is almost instantaneous, and in Wolf, like he's one of those reluctant werewolves. Like he finds out that he's been doing bad things and he wants to be locked up, which I thought was really, really funny considering it's Jack Nicholson and he's completely unhinged in everything else he does. So,
my big takeaway from that movie was that some people apparently put tequila in their coffee.
Oh no! He wasn't drinking coffee.
No, I'm saying at the end, Michelle Pfeiffer, she says, "Did you put some tequila in your coffee? I can smell it from a mile away."
Oh yeah, that's right. Because at the very beginning, when right after Jack is bitten, he smells tequila on his coworker's breath, and his coworker tries to say, "I put a drop in my coffee," and he's like, "You didn't have any coffee."
There you go.
Yeah. I think the only thing that I would knock on Wolf, though, and this is a very minor complaint, is that it's a one-way transformation. They never get to turn back to being human.
Boo.
That's not true.
Yeah, at the very end, when Michelle Pfeiffer, she completely turns and she never turns back.
I thought because Jack turns back and forth. So
yeah, but they say that eventually you don't come back. That was like one of the underlying stories. Unless I'm misremembering. Now, granted, now you've seen it more recently than me, so you have better information. But the last time I remember watching it, like 10 years ago, it was a one-way ticket. Eventually, you don't turn back.
Okay, because I thought the whole thing with the amulet that the guy gave him was that you could keep the wolf at bay.
Right, but once you turn into a wolf, once you allow yourself to fully become the wolf, then you're done. It could stop you in your progress.
Maybe I just completely missed that part, but no, I thought it held up fairly well considering it was.
It's a good movie.
7 years ago. One thing I loved about it was how claustrophobic a lot of the filming was. Like, there's a lot of imagery that looks like bars, and there are a lot of actual bars, and it's very, very tight and very, very claustrophobic, which I thought was really, really cool. Also, Enrico Morricone does the so that's always a good thing.
It is.
Well, guys, we're super late. Gary, do you have one more? Have we forgotten anybody?
Not really. I do want to give it. We were talking about how all the Howling sequels kind of suck. I will say that 5 doesn't, though. 5 is
yes,
kind
it
of
does.
its own movie.
Don't you put that lie into the world, Gary?
Hey, no, 5. Whether it's a murder mystery, they're trapped in that castle. It's fun.
Hey, the third one is trash. The third one is trash, but I have complete nostalgia for it.
Now, you see, that's an acceptable response. Okay, you can go.
But the fifth one, it sounds like they are actually going whole hog into the Italian Gothic there.
Definitely.
I think it has to be. Sure.
We've come full circle.
I think we have.
Guys, we start with Giallo, we end with Giallo.
And
there's always room for Giallo.
Yes!
Thank you. You're fired.
Joe, hit the out button. We can't end any better than that. Hit the out now.
Out. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.